Okay, so this is the point light. And the thing to remember with a point light is that it is a light that was putting out light in all directions. But sometimes not all light sources do that. And what we need is we have a light source that's just putting it out in one direction, which is a little more realistic in some cases. So we're just going to pause that. And I can temporarily turn this light off just by going into that light. And it says illuminates by default, and watch what happens when I uncheck that. It just shuts it off. So it still exists. I don't have to delete it. If I say, oh, I like that one, I can just temporarily shut that off so that it is actually, I can do other things and then turn it back on later. So I'm going to pause this, and now I'm going to create an AI AiAreaLight, an Arnold AiAreaLight. Boop. Now, as I scale this guy up, and I'm going to rotate it and bring it up here, and then I'm going to turn this back on. Anytime you create an Arnold light or a lot of lights with the exception of the directional light, you'll see no effect until you go in and you actually start to adjust either the intensity or the exposure. Now, to get the effect with intensity, as I increase it, you notice, wow, 50, 500, 5,000, and so on. I have to really crank this up before I start to see an actual effect with that light. So only at 50,000 am I starting to see it, but you notice it's creating a very nice lighting system here. So if I had some sort of fluorescent light hanging down and I put this in front of it, that would actually work out really nice. And I would just, if I'm using intensity, I really got to crank the bejesus up out of this for me to actually get an effect that I'm going to see. You'll also notice that because it's only pointing downwards, you're getting a darker area here, but that's actually more accurate to if I actually had a light fixture and it wasn't putting light straight up, it was just knocking it down. Now, if I drop this back down to a 1, and then I go and just increase the exposure, as soon as I hit 15, we already start seeing that effect. When I hit 16, it jumps even further. So I guess you could think of it this way, that if I do the intensity, I have a little more control because, I mean, when you're dealing with values at 50,000, 60,000, there's a lot of digits that you could put to ridiculously fine tune it. If you're not being that meticulous and going through it, you could just go and increase. I usually just go through the exposure unless I'm really trying to fine tune something. And I could do that same thing where I could warm this guy up. And get a nice lighting scheme inside of there. Now, one thing you're also going to notice is the shadows are a lot softer with this light in the rendering than they were in the previous light, and both the previous lights, and it's giving me a nice spread. I'd probably, want to start to adjust some things, but I can soften the edge and the roundness, but it also has different shapes that you can do. This is what's called the quad shape. If I go to the cylinder, it becomes a tube. And let's pause that because this is really great. Sorry about that. We had a bit of a crash, which will happen when you are doing lighting. So what we're going to do, let me just recreate that. Create. Oops, no, not you. Arnold AiAreaLight. And I'm going to take that Arnold area light and I'm going to move it up here. And we were at changing it to a cylinder where we could see it like this. So what this does is literally puts out light based off of, I could scale it from the center and then scale it long ways. And or I could just hold down Control, grab this angle, which constrains it. So I basically have turned this into a light tube, right? So the cool part about this, with this little light tube, is that if I actually set it up like so, I made this my light source. Let's see what that looks like. And of course, it won't look like anything until I increase my exposure. Let's go up to 10. Now let's go up to 15. Let's go up to 16. And then we'll do that same thing using temperature, but warm it up. Now, this is still, let me pause that and zoom out a little bit. And let's make sure that this camera is at 90 degrees so we could squeeze more in the shot. And now if I do that, it still does not have a visible light source, but you'll notice the difference with this one is that it's putting light out in all directions except the cap. So no light is coming out this end or that end, but it's coming out from all of it, so all around it. So that's really going to vary this up based off of what you're trying to do. What is it I'm trying to get? What is my light source and matching it to that? And then, of course, I still have all of the visibility settings that I can increase or decrease to fine tune it, as well as changing the size and the shape of this. So if I pause that and we look at how that image is, let's keep that image so we have an example. And then I scale it down so it's much shorter, you could see it's physically changing the area it's affecting. So you see now it's more stuck in that one center, is more pronounced, but it's not as long. See the differences. Just pause it. And a disc. So you can also make this literally a disc because you're going to have certain light fixtures that are round. And then you could have this little disc here to mimic that. Let's go into our channel box and just kind of make sure 0, -90. Yeah. No, 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 no. Okay. Oh. So there we go. And you can see how that's affecting it just live inside of here. It's pointing straight down as a disk. So if I actually go and do that one, you'll see that it's still is giving me this disk sort of shaped shadow, and it's casting a nice soft shadow here. And if I wanted to increase its detail and resolution, then I would just go in to that AiAreaLight and once again start increasing things like my samples. Oops, I did not want 43. I just wanted, like, let's make it 5. That was a bit much. And it also has the same thing where I can change my shadow color. I can also change and normalize it, which means when I uncheck that, it's going to go nuclear because my exposure is so high. So now I have to drop that way down. and just kind of fine tune that. So once again, we have a lot of different ways that we can actually tweak some things out in here. And once again now, yeah, it takes a lot. Be prepared for crashes when you're actually doing stuff. Let's take that directional light and the temperature I want a little cooler. And I'm also gonna lower that a bit. So this is the directional light. I'm adjusting the outside lighting, trying to make it a little darker out there. That's better. Making it a nighttime scene, and we've got the nice warm on the inside. But suppose we wanted lights on the outside. So the next couple of lights we're going to do is the spotlight and then a mesh light.